All right. I think we're recording.
What's going on, everyone?
Yo, so here we are for episode 2. So this has already been a success, right? I think we were surprised that we even made it through the first one, let alone now in our second week in our second episode. So Thank you for those that listened. I'm sure the audience was small, but we have to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, and be sure to share it with your friends, your mom, your grandmother, and if you don't have a grandmom, your grandfather.
And we promise we'll keep the adult language to a minimum, so you can start to share it with your kids as well.
Yeah, and if we slip up, it is what it is. Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk real quick. Let's just kind of share, I guess, a little bit of the behind the scenes, because I know, like, whenever I listen to podcasts, it's just a podcast, right? And they don't tell you anything about what's going on behind the scenes. So obviously, we recorded last week, and it was just a complete straight record. There was no editing at all on that podcast. It literally was, we just we recorded and went. And we're hoping we can do that again here, because I think the less editing we do, the better. But
I agree.
We recorded that, and we actually at that point didn't have anything set up with regards to publishing it, right? I think we all knew that we were going to shoot for Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and sure enough, we got Apple Podcasts set up. So if you listened to the last one, you certainly heard it on Apple Podcasts, and that's where you'll find us at least through the end of this year. Apple's actually kind of cool. It was like $20 for a year, and they actually will host the file. So we didn't need an RSS feed or a podcast hosting company to do it. So I think just to kind of get us started and not to have to worry about the behind the scenes logistics of that and focus on content, we'll just run with Apple Podcasts, and then we're going to do Spotify and maybe actually start the video beginning of the year once we sort of get the hang of this, I think, and kind of settle in. Does that make sense for you?
Yeah, whenever someone's listening to a podcast, you don't want to just limit that audience down to just Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts. So including both of those would be awesome. And then once we start recording the video, hopefully we'll get that on YouTube or wherever. I think actually on Spotify, they have the option to upload a video. So if you're on the Spotify app, you just rotate the phone sideways and then the video will pop up. So
yeah, I mean, I looked at Spotify, and they don't host anything. So you actually have to go to a third-party company to host your audio files or your video files, and then you just RSS feed them to Spotify, and they pick it up and then just basically run with it. So it's not a really big deal. It's just, a couple of extra steps. And the good news is it's not just Spotify if you go through a third party. Google and Facebook and a bunch of other sites actually host or hold podcasts, and I think there's also hooks to kind of get you some marketing potential. So we'll look into all that. I mean, again, I think it's going to be kind of small and tight, and we'll just run through the rest of November and December and give ourselves a chance to kind of get comfortable with the format and just doing it, and then we'll really jump into it full throttle next year. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, but kind of diving into that first episode, I was kind of like overwhelmed with the amount of good, positive feedback that we had. Like, obviously, like you said, we kind of had a smaller first pool of people who listened to the first one, but, that's what it's all about, and especially when people dedicate an hour of their day listening to what you have to say, and it almost makes you feel like more connected with that person. It makes them feel like, all right, I want to hear what this person has to say, and just based off of everyone who messaged and said, keep going with it, or I want to hop on it. Like, we were obviously going to try to get as many people in here, and this is going to be a weekly thing between me and Joe. Like, we really, like, me personally, I bet I could speak for Joe too. Like, we like doing this. Like, this is something that it's just an extra thing that we both are passionate about.
It's fun.
It's a lot of fun, and it's like almost kind of like, I was talking to somebody about it. It's almost like a free therapy almost. You're kind of just sitting here like, speaking your mind for an hour, talking about topics, giving your 2 cents on it. And that might be a good name, 2 cents.
Yeah.
And it's just like a cool little thing to do. So, I mean, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm glad a lot of people like it. And like I said, it's free to share with your friends and rate it. So if you guys can think of 3 people who would like the podcast, please share it to them and say, hey, just give it a shot. And I'm sure we'll convince them to buy, NFTs and crypto and all that different type of jazz sooner or later.
Absolutely.
Just like Joe.
Sure. Yeah. So let's kind of talk about that. So obviously we talked about crypto, and I kind of was like confused about it, and still I'm very much confused about it. But quick update. So my son, Noah, 16 years old, just turned 16 like a week ago.
We're going to get him on?
Next week, I think.
Okay.
anyway, so he for coincidental, had nothing to do with the podcast. He actually said, "Hey, I want Bitcoin for my birthday." So I went and set up an account on Coinbase.
That's the best one.
Bought him like $100 worth of Bitcoin, which was like 0.0000001 something. It was crazy.
Do you know what you bought it at?
I think it was like $67,000.
Yeah, it's gonna keep going.
It's actually
too.
down, right? I think it's down to like 63.
It'll go back up.
He just lost $4. So welcome to the world of investing. But yeah, it was a pretty straightforward process. I mean, if you've ever bought stocks, it's basically the same process. What absolutely amazed me was Coinbase, right? So you go to the buy window to buy crypto, and they basically give you a list of the top crypto coins or currencies,
like the featured ones.
And there are, no lie, there are over 100 crypto, currencies or coins.
The tags.
And obviously, I think everybody's heard Bitcoin, everybody's heard Ethereum, and they've heard Dogecoin, and there's about 4 or 5 that I think even if you're not into the investment world, you've heard of it. But there are hundreds.
Absolutely.
And the scary thing is, right next to it, it tells you what the market value is, and Bitcoin's like $1.2 trillion.
Oh,
right?
the market cap.
Yeah, market cap. So $1.2 trillion, right? So we could probably argue all day long, what the hell? Where's that $1.2 trillion? It's just smoke and mirrors, if you ask me, right? There's nothing behind it, but and it goes down. Like Ethereum's like, I don't know, $500 billion, but you start getting down to like number 75, and it's still like $50 billion.
There's a lot of money to be made.
And there are names that, I mean, I'm like, who in the hell is buying some of this crap? I should probably have pulled it up, and we could just rattle off some of the names, and people would probably go like, what's he talking about?
Yeah, so with a couple of the big ones, like he said, you obviously got your Bitcoins, you have your Ethereum, and then you have these things called like altcoins, that's where you kind of get into more like Litecoin or Dogecoin, as you mentioned. Excuse me. Or like Shiba Inu or
the dog, right? Yeah.
That's the one that Elon Musk is backing again, because he did the same thing with Doge, and I made a couple bucks off of that. Like I put in like a small number, let's call it like $50 to $100, made like $200 off of it, just because he's tweeting about it and people are just going to his Twitter, seeing that he's tweeted, and then buying it. So
yeah,
he has a crazy pool, that guy, like with anything that he's invested in. And I don't know if you've seen, he pulled out like $5 billion in Tesla stocks, or sold them.
Well, he had to, because of tax purposes.
Oh, is that what it was?
He had like, he had like, I don't know, tens of billions of dollars in stock options that were vesting, which means that he basically had to buy the shares. And I guess, I don't know. I don't know all the details, but I mean, he basically had to sell the $5 billion just to pay the tax on what he was earning. So, yeah, that's the reason why he did it. It was a tax play.
Gotcha. And then he also, you see that thing? This was a few weeks ago. Sorry for talking about Elon Musk so much, but it was the United Nations or someone like called him out and were like, "Hey, like you have $300 billion. You could solve like world hunger for $6 billion." And he's like, break it down in a public document of how exactly you want to spend this $6 billion, and I'll give you the money straight up. And it's been crickets ever since.
I mean, his whole beef there was I would be more than willing to cough up $5-10 billion of my fortune to solve world hunger if I didn't think that half of that money was going to go into some African dictator's pocket. So I get it. And of course they'll never call us bluff, and because they can't, because they have no real accountability for half the shit that goes on. So
that's the beauty of these crypto coins, because it's all on the blockchain. So if it's on the blockchain, just much like how you bought that crypto, if I knew, your wallet or whatever it was, I could look up Joe Babiak or whatever your thing is, and then see every purchase that you guys made with that. I mean, it's kind of like invasive a little bit, but that's the reason why people.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I guess the other cool thing was, so obviously once I bought the coin or through Coinbase, I then transferred it to Noah, and Noah hands me this like 26-digit code.
The wallet, it's like the wallet ID number.
And he says, just send it here. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? How the hell? And so I click on the send button, right? Coinbase right at the front thing has a send button. And sure enough, I just copied and pasted this 26-digit code in, and the money just vanished. And he got it. So
it scares you at first, doesn't it?
So
You're kind of like,
okay,
it's like a limbo.
I guess I can see what's going on with all these hackers and stuff using that as their preferred venue, because it just there's no, I guess there really isn't any tracking for that.
Yeah. And for the people that don't know, like, what a wallet is, it's kind of like a routing number. That's like if I were to go to Joe and ask for, a wire transfer, it's the same concept. I give him my account number or whatever, and he could send me the money. And it's like you said, like when you first send it, it just goes like away, and you're like, okay, well, now what's going to happen, But that's funny. A lot of
all I can
hackers
say
get
is I was
involved.
glad I was working with $100, not a $67,000 full blown token to just test the waters on that. But yeah, it works seamlessly. So I think that's going to be my son's at least Christmas, all of his all the holidays and stuff. He's going to ask for Bitcoin. And I don't even want to know what he's doing with it. I don't know. Full disclosure, right? He's always on the computer, and he I think he wanted to buy Roblox accounts, and I'm like,
you can buy Roblox accounts with crypto?
I guess, there's a market for that. And I said to him, dude, you play that game 24/7. You must have the most ultimate character of all time. And he's like, well, no, there's still some things I don't have that I can get if I buy somebody else's account. And I'm like, oh my God.
Dude, this...
And everything, it's all digital, right? So, it just, for me, being an old school guy, it's like, holy Christ, there is nothing tangible here, right? He is spending legit money on vapor, right? It's like
imaginary.
It's digital nothing.
But
right?
that's what the beauty behind it is.
I know.
Because you played World of Warcraft, and you kind of understand like the whole these skins in the games. Like, for example, CS:GO.
I get it. There's value in that.
Oh
right?
my God! Like CS:GO, you could buy a I forget the names of them, but like you could buy like a knife or whatever, like a karambit knife for like $5,000, and somebody's like $5,000, like what, fake money? Like, no, real life, serious, like someone's cold hard cash.
Yeah, I get it.
But this kind of actually segues us into our next point. This is what I texted you about yesterday, and we're gonna be kind of teetering this line of whether or not what you think. Like, so okay, let me break this down here, because this is gonna be a series of I don't know. We might have to do a cut here. So yesterday I was driving home after, college. You ever have like a long work day and you're driving home after like the work day kind of kicked your butt a little bit and you're kind of thinking about things. So that's what happened to me yesterday. I was driving home and I seen this guy in a Corvette. The Corvette like C8 or whatever, kind of looks like the McLaren. And it got me thinking about like the rich class, the middle class, and the lower class. And I'm thinking to myself, what's going to be that differential like point between the rich and the lower class if the middle class is no longer working? Like, as you know, there's like been like a whole like kind of like shortage in workers, right? Bear with me here.
Yeah.
So
alrighty.
So here we go. So I'm thinking to myself, if we have all these people not working and their jobs are starting to close, like we have a Starbucks right down the road and they were closing early because they didn't have enough workers. They were closing at like 5 p.m.
Yep.
So now in the new world, could you see AIs and robots? Like, I know this is sounding crazy, but like, could you see that taking over like the middle class's position?
Well, yeah, that's already happening, right? So all you got to do is look at all the West Coast, right, when they were going crazy with trying to raise the minimum wage to like $17 an hour or whatever it was, and even before COVID and before all the other reasons for people not working, right? You saw McDonald's and stuff like that putting up these digital cashiers, right? So you basically walk into McDonald's. I think they have it in the one we have here locally, right?
Oh, wow.
You can actually just walk in and it's a kiosk, right? And you just go and you touch your order and then you go up and pick it up. So there's no cashier at all. There's no interaction with a human cashier at all.
And that kind of like minimizes, error, like human error. Like, how many times have you been somewhere and you've ordered something and got the complete wrong thing?
Well, that too. Yeah, true. I mean, there's a lot of pros to it, but people, sometimes I guess you got to be careful what you ask for because you're going to put people out of a job. So
yeah, I mean, but
automation's a thing. I mean, for sure.
I mean, if you go to like a high school, or a middle school or whatever it is, and you ask them, the new thing of like what they want to do in the future, like 9 times out of 10, they're not going to say, oh, I want to be like an accountant. Like, they're going to say, I want to be a YouTuber. I want to be a TikToker. You know what I mean? It's
apparently so do we.
Yeah. And like all these like jobs coming forward, I feel like in this generation, it's a lot easier to make would you say in this generation, like coming up, it's a lot easier to make more money than it would be in any other generation, or do you see that as like a disadvantage with like Social Security and everything kind of slowly fading away?
Wow, that's a pretty intense topic.
Hey man, we're getting right into the meat and potatoes.
I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know if it's easier making money today than it was back, when I was young. I think it's just different, right? I mean, maybe you don't have to work as hard, like physically hard, I don't know.
Working smarter, not harder.
Yeah, I mean, everything's digital, right? So, I mean, the world's a different place. But yeah, I mean, I think clearly there are new and interesting opportunities, and it's just the way it was back then too, right? I mean, it hasn't changed.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of like ties back to the last week's topic. We were mentioning like the Yeezy shoes and kind of like the whole like reselling thing. I feel like now there's just a lot more opportunity. So, when Kanye or Yeezy or Adidas drops a new shoe, you could set up these bots to buy you accounts and set up a business.
I mean, not to show my geekier side, but obviously when I was young, right, it wasn't shoes and it wasn't YouTube and stuff like that, but it's the same sort of premise, right? I mean, so if you're buying and selling and trading shoes, when I was a kid, it was comic books or baseball cards, right?
Exactly.
And it's the exact same thing, right? So, you buy baseball cards or comic books cheap, and then you turn around and you sell them for more because of scarcity or whatever it is. So it's just a different product.
I think it's a different product in a bigger market because back then the internet wasn't as prevalent.
Well, absolutely, yeah.
Like
I mean,
now you could
the internet has changed the world completely, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so putting buyers and sellers together, it's a whole. It was a local exchange, right?
Exactly.
You go to the local comic book store and hang out with 6 or 7 other guys or geeks and trade amongst yourselves, and now you have the entire world is potentially your client base with just a flick of a switch. So that's absolutely changed. And so yes, I mean, I guess you could say from the perspective of that type of dynamic, it's definitely vastly easier, or not vastly easier, but there's more opportunity for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I see some of these like crazy brand deals or anything that these internet guys, like even like the YouTubers that we talk about, they just have a lot more access to brand. Like, I don't know, like you could make like a minute ad and make $2,000, $300,000 off of it. Whereas like, I don't know, you kind of never really heard of that stuff before besides like the top celebrities like Howard Stern or whatever. So,
yeah, but I mean, all of those trades are, you're still relying on some major brand that's already done a lot of the legwork, right? So, I mean, obviously Adidas or Nike on the shoe front. I mean, we're kind of getting some experience with marketing, and it's not as easy as you think, right? Obviously we have ExclusiveMinds for clothing, exmnds.com.
This episode is brought to you by Exclusive Minds.
There you go, right? But, so it's kind of a learning experience because, I mean, again, just because you do something doesn't necessarily mean people will come, right? And marketing is a huge part of that. I know that that's obviously what you're doing in college, and you're already sort of questioning whether it was worth doing it.
Oh my God, that'll be the next.
I mean, let's face facts. Marketing and developing brands is a huge thing, right? So
yeah, I mean, marketing. I didn't realize but prior to making a business, marketing is kind of like almost laughed at, or any business kind of going into college. Like as you mentioned. Is it really worth it at the end of the day? It does play a huge, significant part of any business. I would say that without marketing, you don't have a business at all. Like if you can't get that product out there, create some sort of value, what's making that product stand out or differentiate from any other product.
Yeah, it's the chicken and the egg. Which more important, the product itself or the brand?
Exactly. And, and then that leads us to our next point of kind of like we were talking about, like, is college really worth it for business? I mean, we can leave that sentence open-ended for is college worth it, period. But I would say to an extent for certain things. And I feel like if you want to take it away for what we were talking about kind of prior, it makes the most sense with doctors or.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, for me.
As someone who graduated.
I didn't actually.
No.
I went to college, but I did not graduate. So I do not have a degree.
The more you know.
I'm pretty successful in business. So, I mean, if you ask me, back when I was, going to college, which would have been the late 80s into the early 90s, in order to really get a job in mainstream America, you needed a college degree, right? That was your gateway to do it. You had to have it. And actually, it wasn't easy for me. I kind of just stumbled along early on because in sales you can kind of get away with it. I mean, if you're successful, you're successful. But there were certainly situations where I actually applied to work at some companies and I was immediately turned down because I didn't have a degree, regardless of my experience.
A piece of paper.
Yeah. I mean, they wouldn't even entertain talking to me. So
Wow.
back then it was required. The good news is I think for most people today it isn't, right? I mean, even places like Apple and stuff like that, I think that they prominently discuss the fact that they'll actually entertain hiring you even for like coding and stuff like that if you don't have a college degree, because I guess they realize that, if you can code, right? You don't need to go to college.
The CEO didn't graduate college, right? He
did. He went to Auburn, sure. He
Okay.
did. But yeah, so I mean, if you ask me, if you want to be an engineer, a doctor, a nurse, a lawyer, you probably need to go to college and see it all the way through, and it's a good learning experience. But if you kind of are fumbling your way through life and not knowing what the hell you want to do, obviously getting a humanities degree or, an English degree or, potentially a marketing degree to go into sales, it's a waste of money.
Yeah, if that's the direction you want to go, I feel like my direction for it, if you ask any college student, they really don't know what they're doing, right, until they get sent out into the real workforce. It's one of those things where you kind of just got to play it by ear. Like how many, once I break into a company and get into a company, I can leverage that into like maybe going into the marketing field or the sales field, like you said. So, I mean, it's just different from that point of view. I feel like college has just been such like a secondary to school or that or the army. I mean, I feel like those are like the two things that everyone
at the end of the day, if you ask me, there's no better learning than on the job real world engagement, right? Yeah. So, does it make more sense to go to a 4-year university and go through all the classwork, or does it make sense to go in as an intern or, some entry level position and spend those 4 years actually learning the job that you would be in? And I
building those relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you ask me, I think, after those 4 years, you're going to be better off in most cases, right? Again, there are exceptions, but I mean, in most cases, I think you're going to be better off having those 4 years of real world experience, hands-on with the job that you want to do. And like you said, building relationships and stuff like that, and just getting socialized in that world. It's more valuable.
I mean, and that kind of leads me to the most important thing. It's so cliche to say, and I hate even saying it, but it's not about like what you know, it's who you know. Like it's kind of like if you know the CEO of a company and he's just like, all right, I'm going to give this kid a shot who, I kind of believe in, versus a kid who's got their master's degree. Like, there's kind of like the pros and cons. Like, obviously, you're going to give somebody who on a personal level a shot over somebody like, there's a number of examples, and not trying to sound like a hater, but there's probably other clothing brands that we look at and we're like, how the heck did these guys like get their business to where it's at? Or not just clothing brands, but anything. Like, they had to get given a shot, or they put that work in and got it done. So I think that's like a key point. I always kind of look at that, like who you know versus what you know.
I mean, there's always something to who you know. It's hard to say. I mean, in this day and age, who you know has a part, but when you look at bigger corporations, publicly traded companies and stuff like that, that who you know will just get you sort of the interview or kind of get you through the door, but it will not ensure anything.
Yeah.
And God, even the interviewing process, I mean, you'll obviously start to go through this, I guess, as you kind of get up. The interviewing process is just completely and vastly changed. To the point where, like, when I was doing it, right, it was, here's your resume. One person would basically just kind of look at your resume, look at your history, ask you a couple of very basic questions and sort of just feel you out. And then you either get the job or you didn't. You might talk to 2 or 3 other people at most. And I haven't interviewed often, but I guess, obviously I've been in the job I'm in now for like 7 years. So talking 7-8 years ago through the transition, interviews today are just insane, right? Yeah. I mean, HR's got they have like sort of a script that they have to follow where they're asking you all these really abstract questions to see how you can kind of handle it. And it's such BS, but they'll ask you that. And then you will literally, and I haven't seen too many exceptions to this, like you will interview with like a dozen freaking people.
Well, to go off that point, I mean, like I was telling you about that internship I was talking about earlier, to get an internship that girl went through 4 series of interviews
Yeah,
in
it's-
one
yeah.
day. So it's like to get an internship position, like granted it's a credible company, but
Right, and at that point, it's not who you know, right?
yeah,
I mean,
you're kind of
because
just
you're
throwing to
gonna,
the wolves for lions.
it
Then
might be who you know for one person, but not
all 4.
the fourth or the fifth or the sixth person you're interviewing with. And I mean, I went through that experience, and if you're in a room with 7 people and they're all kind of round robins asking you questions, you might get a rapport going with 5 of them, and you might
Fumble it too.
have 2 of them that think you're the biggest idiot in the world, and it happens all the time, right? I mean, different personalities mesh with different people, and man, it's just a pain. I mean, seriously, interviewing is such a pain in the ass these days, and it's not the way it used to be. I mean, it was really simple and kind of clean cut many years ago. Now it's kind of taken on a whole new life of it, and it's probably because someone went to college for 4 years to how to be the best interviewer on the planet, and all of these ins and outs that you have to follow in roles, and all these psychology questions that will, I guess, vet you better. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just a giant loophole that you just gotta hope you can finesse and maneuver your way
It's crazy.
around. And
It's crazy.
there's no set answer for one person. You got to go with comfort over what's going on around you. Go comfort over meta of what other people are doing. You know what I mean? So
Well, I'm glad. So that wasn't as heavy of a topic as I thought. I thought you were kind of leaning towards the political question. So we'll avoid that one too. Let's continue to avoid politics as much as possible.
until we get the next.
You
guest
sort
on.
of started. I was like, okay, here comes the macroeconomic, social,
No.
rich versus middle class versus poor, and I was like, oh no, don't go there.
Whenever, and Joe knows me for a long time. Like when it comes to politics, I find myself being very like cutthroat right down the middle. Like I really don't dabble too much in politics.
Well, I mean, at some point we're going to have to talk about it, but I guess for now, let's just say let's go, Brandon, and move on to the next topic, right?
We're going to get my friend on the next podcast, and we'll let you guys go ahead. That's going to be a fantastic podcast, by the way. I can't wait for that.
Politics is just freaking fabulous. So anyway, I let's lighten it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So I know I kind of hinted to this on the first podcast. It's the first, right? Let's talk coffee.
Absolutely. My favorite thing. One of my favorite things.
So I mean, you're obviously a lot younger than me and are drinking coffee. So I got my start in coffee in my 50s. I
Wait,
never
what?
ever drank coffee.
I never knew this.
No,
Really?
seriously. So I never drank coffee. Well, you know what it is I think somewhere along the line, like I tried coffee and I could never get the sugar, milk, cream balance, and I just never liked it. Right. So I didn't really kind of get into coffee until probably my early 50s.
Wow. That's actually.
So for those on the, it's a couple of years ago, right? So, but anyway, what kind of flicked the switch for me was, going to a Starbucks with a coworker, and he orders a nitro cold brew.
That was your first good experience.
Yeah. So,
Oh my God.
and I'm like, well, what the hell? I'm not a coffee guy. So I would go in and I'd order a freaking tea, or I just get a bottle of water and hang out, because Starbucks is obviously, when you're in business, that's kind of a meeting point.
The go-to point.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, that looks pretty cool. It turns out, so for those that don't know, nitro cold brew coffee is, if you know beers and you know Guinness, right? It's nitrogen injected beer, so it comes out all foamy and creamy.
From the
And
sprout.
I guess at the end of the day, what happens is the nitrogen cuts the bitterness. So nitrogen or nitro cold brew typically is not as bitter of a coffee, right?
Right,
If you ever drank black coffee, right, it's very bitter. That's why people put the sugar and the cream,
Especially if it's been sitting out.
kind of ease it. And I could never sort of get that balance down,
Mm-hmm.
I guess, is what it really came down to. And I just sort of gave up and never drank it, right? But I was like, oh, that looks so cool. Let me try one, right? So I tried it, and I was like, oh, this is it. I'm done. So for the last, 4 or 5 years, ever since that first came out, I have been just sort of a Starbucks nitro cold brew junkie, and that has led me now to drinking regular coffees.
Jeez, man. So you really made a complete 180 in your
Yeah.
trying it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So were your parents against you drinking coffee, or was it
No,
more your choice?
no. My dad drank. He would. Back when Wawa was Wawa, the literally the corner grocery store. He would get a cup of coffee a day, right? So my dad drank coffee all the time. I just couldn't find the right
balanced combination.
And and as a kid, I mean, right? You have a very short attention span. So if I couldn't dial it in, and after about
shots.
4 or 5 times, it's like screw it and move on to the next best thing. So
Yeah.
I never really got into it. I never got back into it. And then, of course, at the same time, if you kind of think about it, right? So for me, my college or my drinking coffee start for you, it was probably when you got into college, right? I mean,
No. So
Okay.
you want to hear what actually happened?
well, let me just
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
will. But for me, so it was college, and energy drinks
Oh God.
just started about that same period of time. So I did have another avenue, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't like, okay, if I needed caffeine, Red Bull was just hitting the market back in the late 80s, if you think about it.
Oh wow. So they didn't have like Red Bull vodkas prior. I guess they didn't because it wasn't out yet.
No, I mean, if you think about it, like my heavy drinking days, my late or mid to late 20s and early 30s, that was when Red Bull was just kind of hitting the market in the U.S. So I that was my outlet, right? So I mean, it wasn't like I was completely devoid of caffeine and stuff like that. So I guess you could sit there and say that I picked up Red Bull and the energy drinks kind of spiraled out of control after that, and that was my vice. But you kind of get over that at some point, and so I found coffee, and I'm thrilled with it.
Yeah, I mean, when we went to New York, this was what, 2018, 2019?
Yeah, just before
Yeah.
COVID, we went to the Starbucks Reserve.
The biggest Starbucks in the world, or one
Well,
of them.
so they Starbucks Reserve, they have, I think in the States, they've got 3 locations: Seattle, Chicago, and New York, where it's sort of like the macked out mega Starbucks where, you can, it's just crazy.
And this
It's
guy,
hard to explain.
this guy Joe orders a flight of cold brews or something like that. And at this point, I'm looking at Joe. I'm like, damn, this guy's a connoisseur of coffee at that point.
I wasn't until just a couple of years ago.
That's
But yeah,
crazy.
I mean, who orders flights of coffee? I mean, come on. But yeah, so this is where coffee takes an art form at the Starbucks Reserve.
man.
If you get a chance, visit one. It's pretty cool. Here,
Yeah, get the flight.
I guess we're doing a commercial for Starbucks now. They're our sponsor. No.
No, we need the bag, Starbucks. So if you guys actually want to give us a couple $1,000, just kidding. But my experience with coffee actually started when I was 2 years old. I was 2 years old, or no, 3 maybe, 2 or 3.
No. Okay.
No, yeah. So now it's starting to click.
Got it.
So we were on a trip to Italy back when I was however old, and over there their culture is a lot different. So like how we're drinking coffee over here, a lot of parents are like, oh, don't do this or don't do that, whatever. Over there it's like drinking water. Like they don't care. So I guess apparently from what I was told, they just gave it to me. I picked it up ever since then. And then this is wild. You're talking about cream and sugar. Nona put me on, this was my grandmother, by the way. She put me on to putting a raw egg in the coffee, mixing the egg, putting vanilla, sugar, continue stirring, and then put milk in it. I forget what kind of drink
Holy
it is.
mackerel.
Yeah. So you put like a raw egg, you're doing a little Rocky Balboa type montage in your head and down it. It's really good, actually. I mean, I've been drinking it ever since then and really enjoyed it. I really never got into the energy drinks. Like back when, I don't know, I guess like when I first started playing like video games and stuff like that. I would
Well, yeah,
chug the-
weren't you like ordering some special
Yeah.
energy drink when you were doing Call of Duty tours or some shit?
So, so what Joe's talking about, if you guys are in the Call of Duty scene or follow like FaZe Clan or Optic or anything, they had this thing called G Fuel, and it's like kind of like a 0-calorie caffeine supplement that sponsors Call of Duty and gaming in general and stuff like that. And back in the day, this is like kind of way off topic, but FaZe Clan moved into a house that was sponsored by G Fuel, and everyone's like, what the heck is this? They're buying a house, first gaming house, whatever. It's just like a caffeine drink that all like the gamers used to drink. So it was just kind of like buying into the hype of that rather than going to like a Wawa and getting a Monster. But now they're actually in Wawa, believe it or not. G Fuel has canned energy drinks, just like everything else.
Yeah.
So they're doing pretty good. I mean, I didn't know that like it was the late 50s or the early 50s for you. That's actually kind of crazy. Opening different perspectives out here.
Yeah, no, my window for coffee is pretty short. And now I'm a complete junkie. So, I mean, in addition to obviously having a nitro cold brew sweet spot, we have 2 Nespresso machines here in the house, which are the capsule things. And so I basically drink 2 to 3 cups of coffee a day.
Sounds about right.
It's probably why my blood pressure's through the roof, but I mean, and it's quick how fast I've become sort of a connoisseur of coffee. I love coffee.
Do you have the debate? Could you see the both sides? Did you ever have a Keurig?
So my my first entree into the whole, I guess, cup thing or capsule thing was Starbucks had a machine.
Oh, okay.
So I was going to Starbucks,
Yeah.
obviously, and I was like, okay, let's get I'll get a Starbucks machine. And it was basically the Verissimo, or not the Verissimo. Yeah, is that it? It's the
know.
standard one.
It's like a single one. You drop it in, fill it up
yeah.
with water, and it just comes out.
Yeah.
Now, what would you say? What's better? Because the Nespresso ones, I went into like Macy's or something like that, or maybe it was.
Bloomingdale's has.
Bloomingdale's, that's what
they
it
have
is.
the boutiques.
Yeah,
some of them.
and they're pretty expensive for those machines. So would you recommend the Nespresso machine, or do you think the Starbucks did the same job, or is it like a whole new
Well,
experience?
so Nespresso is well, you're drinking a cup here, right? It's
really good.
It's I guess it's a Europe. Again, I'm not as much of a connoisseur as I think, but it's a European style coffee in that it is creamy.
That's what I was thinking. It was it was like foamy kind of.
Yeah, because it comes out creamy, so
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to explain. But I love it. I mean,
Yeah,
and they
that's
have they have a trillion different flavors. Like you can get chocolate fudge, you can get vanilla, you can get traditional coffees, right? Just based on the level of intensity of the thing. So anywhere from like a really heavy black coffee to you can do espressos, you can do double espressos. So it's cool, and you just pop it in and boom, you're off and running.
This is kind of going to take us a little bit off topic, spare the moment, but I have a topic here called hot takes. Now that we're on the situation of coffees, what's your hot take for pumpkin spice lattes coming up with the fall time of the year? Good or bad?
Nespresso has a pumpkin spice flavored thing, and last year I liked it, and we bought a bunch of them this year, and I didn't like it this year. So I don't know. Maybe it's just an ebb and flow, or just something different. But I've had the Starbucks ones, and I like them. I mean,
They have the cold brews now too.
yeah.
Those are really good.
Yep.
I like the cold brew because like you said, it's kind of like a lighter coffee. Like you drink it and it doesn't have that same intensity that you would get from like a standard coffee or Americano, which is just like, what is the hype with Americano, first of all? Is it just water and coffee? That's
Pretty
all
much.
it is.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I got into it for a little bit because like I saw some people drinking. I was like, let me just try it out. And just get it a cold brew at that point. It's just like there's no point of getting an Americano.
Well, I knew I had really kind of jumped the shark on, my coffee connoisseurism when I was in. So we went to Savannah for a team building meeting for my work. So I was there for 4 days, and I've been to Savannah before, but now that I travel, when I travel, I tend to try and find these like little, hole in the wall coffee places, and
bring back a bag.
yeah, not just Starbucks, because every Starbucks is the same. I still like the nitro cold brew, but I'll go to like these little mom and pop coffee shops. So I'm in Savannah, Georgia, and so there's like this one coffee shop that's kind of famous, the Sentient Bean. If you've been to Savannah, you may know it. But I go there and I order a coffee, and I'm like, man, this coffee sucks. And I'm thinking, all right, maybe it's just a bad experience. Right? It's all watered down. It's like really, it's almost like an Americano. Right? And I don't like Americanos. Like, who the hell wants watered down coffee?
Yeah.
And I wasn't ordering an Americano. It was just a regular coffee, but it was really watered down. So I'm like, all right, screw this. I literally like took a couple sips and kind of threw it out. And we were wandering, and in these days, if you're in any sort of touristy area, right, there's a million coffee shops, right?
Yeah,
So
every corner.
walk 2 blocks and there's the next one, and go in there and order a different cup of coffee, and sure enough, it's the exact same thing. I'm like, what the hell's the deal here, right?
Oh my God.
And I'm thinking maybe it's just me. Maybe I ate something earlier that was kind of giving me this bad vibe on coffee, and I'm like, all right, let me take a break. Maybe I brushed my teeth and I don't remember it. So the next day I'm out, I'm like, all right, let me go to a completely different place, and I actually come across a place that's got nitro cold brew, and I order that, thinking, okay, this is going to be perfect. And it sucked, and I'm like, what is the
Maybe
deal?
it's the water or something.
So funny you say that, right? So I'm venting to one of my coworkers. I'm like, what's with the freaking coffee in Savannah? It sucks across the board. It's not just one location. And even so, I'll finish that in a second. I actually went to a Starbucks
Just to get the Starbucks drink.
and I ordered
like
a
a
nitro
control
cold
group.
brew
Yeah.
at Starbucks, and it sucked.
Oh, geez. Yeah,
So
something in the water.
I'm like,
The
okay.
beans are bad. I don't know.
So I said, I don't know what the hell the deal is, and the guy goes to me. He goes, "It's the water." Because
makes sense.
I guess Savannah is on a river, and it's very marshy and salty, and so I guess even with filtration, they're pulling water from a very salty environment or whatever. So
You're getting like a salty coffee every single
so
time.
apparently water impacts the quality of your coffee, right? So I guess in theory, if it was brewed with spring water or, filtered water, it might taste like a coffee that I'm used to. But I was like, oh my God.
So now imagine if you lived down there. You would just
Well,
never
you
drink
get
coffee
used
again?
to it.
Oh,
I mean,
you
I'm
get used to
guessing
it,
that
yeah.
all those people are kind of used to it. So, so I mean, you don't think about these things, but apparently water impacts the quality of your coffee. Because, I mean, sorry, Georgia, if we get any listeners. I know we don't have any listeners, so I'm safe.
No, we might have
eventually, right?
Yeah.
So if you're from Georgia or from Savannah, first of all, I love Savannah, and I would go back in a heartbeat. I just wouldn't drink the coffee.
Make sure to write us an email and let us know your thoughts, Savannah, Georgia listeners. We can,
Sorry.
But shifting gears with keeping on the
Coffee Fox was the other one. So I mean, people from Savannah will know the names of these places, right? They're big, like independent coffee places. The Sentient Bean, and I think it was Coffee Fox, and as well as Starbucks, and they all sucked. It's terrible.
So on the topic of coffee and kind of getting down that rabbit hole of business, we kind of fondled with the idea of maybe possibly like opening up a cafe later down the road. Like, I don't know, just something to do.
Like
that, like boutique, little boutique. But anyway, what do you think like the biggest problem with that would be? Like owning any type of brick and mortar store in the year 2021.
I mean,
not necessarily coffee, but I guess just having
obviously for the suburbs, it's probably not as much of a challenge, but the biggest problem there is there's no barrier to entry. It's very easy to set up a coffee shop. Mm-hmm. Like you spend $1,000 on a machine
or an espresso machine.
Seriously, a lot of these places behind the scenes, they'll actually, use the machines. So there's nothing special. I mean, there's nothing that sets you apart. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy. So, I mean, it's Savannah, right? So Savannah's a very walkable town. And, if you do a 15-minute walk, I'm not kidding, you will run across, a dozen coffee shops that have just popped up. There are just little storefronts where they've got a counter and, some machines behind the scenes, and you order a coffee, right? It's high margin. I mean, how much does it cost to actually make a cup of coffee, right?
Probably cents.
It's pennies on the dollar, right?
Exactly.
So you buy a $4 cup of coffee that costs them 50 cents to make it. So it's really high margin, but the problem is there's really no barrier of entry. So if you are successful, what'll end up happening is it'll start to replicate, and you'll get others that compete with you. And then, how do you hang on to that? And it becomes just at that point, convenience is where Starbucks is so successful. Is if you want a cup of coffee quick, you're not very far from a Starbucks store, right? That's because
they're on every corner.
You don't want to, you're not going to drive 10 minutes to get a cup of coffee, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think another thing that Starbucks offers that a lot of like competitors, like for example Dunkin' Donuts. I love Dunkin' Donuts. Don't take this out of context, Dunkin'. If you want to sponsor us, reach out. But anyhow, the thing with Starbucks is like the lounge and like having it like it's like warm and inviting, like you said. Excuse me. When you're like on a business meeting or whatever, it's like that's the place to go. You don't go to like a Dunkin' Donuts that like sit down with your laptop, your iPad or whatever, and sketch stuff out. Every time we link up, it's always like a Starbucks or something.
I know. I mean, Starbucks are definitely great for that. I mean,
this has been a giant ad for Starbucks, by the way.
It has. It wasn't intentional. I mean, people tend to have love-hate relationships with the big, monolithic. You either hate Amazon or you love Amazon. It's the same thing with Starbucks and coffee. I'm sure there are a lot of people who say, I would never step foot in freaking Starbucks. They suck. They're evil. I don't know, man. I mean, it's a great meeting place. It's a great spot. I mean,
yeah. I mean, they do it. I mean, they seem to do like a lot of things right. I mean, and I've seen on top of that.
That's the reason why they're,
yeah, they do. They kind of hit that mark
hundreds of
on
billions
a lot
of dollar corporation now, right? Because they've done it right.
And I think I even saw something. I don't know if this is completely true, so I'm sorry if this is completely false. But I saw a thing where they're actually going to be lifting the minimum wage for like the baristas or something like that to like almost $20 an hour. Or something.
Yeah, I mean,
$22 or something.
I think if you go and
they pay for college
that's kind of smoke and mirrors. They do if you go to one specific like online college. It's like the University of.
Oh, really?
I don't want to say Phoenix or Arizona or something like that, but yeah, it's not. You can't go to Westchester University or Colgate or one of these Ivy League schools and they're going to pay for that. It's only one specific like college, but still, I mean, it's a good deal.
Yeah, I thought they were like covering tabs out here. I'm like thinking like, dang, if I'm almost like 50,000 in debt, maybe work a couple hours a week at Starbucks.
It's a limited kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I think Amazon's doing that, right? Or no?
I mean, I'm guessing that's the new thing every place is doing because like you said earlier, right? it's hard to get people to work. So not only are you paying $20 an hour, but benefits and stuff like that have to be off the charts. And college is certainly one, right, for younger people.
Yeah, Amazon, whether you love them or hate them, I mean, for two things that popped up recently. Today, we just ordered a third mic, for the guest or whatever. I'm not sure if you used Amazon or whatever you used.
I used Amazon.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
and
we used B&H for the original equipment. So
B&H, if you want to refund us money,
yeah, if you want to sponsor us, Amazon, they just happen to be able to deliver overnight.
That's what I was saying. So you ordered it how long ago? 30
minutes ago.
All right, and when's it coming in?
They'll be here tomorrow morning.
Which
kind of sucks for
morning.
Amazon because there are times where I've ordered stuff and it's here same day.
Yeah, I definitely have experienced that.
I mean, the logistics behind that we could talk about that all day long. I mean,
yeah.
I'm always mind boggled by logistics. Delivery logistics. It's
you're not getting that with any other company though.
I know they got a gigantic, massive warehouse in Wilmington, Delaware, which isn't too far from where I live, and they're just sending a guy on a regular rotation. But it's really mind boggling if you think about it.
It's crazy. You're paying for convenience with them, and there's no other company I could think of that's doing what they're doing. If you order something in the same day. And back to what you were saying with the drones and stuff, that's going to be the next step for them. I could see. So
yeah, I've literally been lying in bed and at 11:30 at night, no lie, 11:30 at night, and my toothbrush broke, and I'm like, oh Christ! And I go on Amazon and look, and at 11:30 at night, I order a toothbrush, and it's on my door at 6 a.m.
Oh my god!
So again, evil corporation, maybe, but God, it's hard to beat that.
It's hard to beat that, and they're driving. Think about that. So something as simple as a toothbrush, you're not only taking away business from a CVS or a pharmacy or wherever you go to buy a toothbrush, but you're also taking business away from the FedEx, the UPS. Yeah. So they're kind of trying to globalize the whole market, and now they're. What's he doing nowadays? Sending ships up into space, trying to compete with Elon. I don't know.
That's fun to be wealthy.
Yeah, I guess if you're multi-billionaire, the next things to do is just go to a different planet.
So we're coming up on 46 minutes of talking.
Really? That flew by.
Yeah, I know. Again, it's been pretty good. So I don't know if we want to just talk a little bit about... Did you get any other feedback on the first episode?
Yeah, so a lot of people liked the first episode, and I got a overwhelming amount of people who would like to come on just to talk about specific things. For example, I have a friend of mine, John, who's more into the political stuff. I know that's going to kind of drive a few viewers away, or to bring some more people on. My friend Mel or Wade, who are more into the gaming side, we could talk more about where you see that coming up. I know you were a gamer yourself or still are.
Yeah,
and
pseudo.
He got the original Halo 2 over here, mint condition.
Well, the funny thing is, I think when you talk gaming, right, everything's first-person shooters, which I utterly suck at this point, right? My hand-to-eye coordination isn't what it used to be. So anytime I get involved in one of those, I get my ass whooped. And so I'm more of an RPG, or what the hell they call it? I should know, right? I've been playing Warcraft for 16 freaking years, right?
Is it MMO?
Yeah. Okay. Massive multiplayer, yeah.
Online, whatever. Yeah, and not to dive too far in that conversation, but I was actually surprised that you said that World of Warcraft is a subscription-based thing, right? Every month.
Always has been, yeah.
Really? Wow. So I wonder... All right, we'll save that for another episode, because that's a very, very interesting...
Yeah, gaming is... I think that when it comes to topics, right? This isn't we're just going to be all over the place, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the cool thing about it, right? That's our intention, is to... Obviously, we spent a lot of time today talking about coffee.
Hey, people, there's a niche for it, man.
Yeah, so I think we'll continue to just kind of throw a topic up and spend maybe the better part of an episode talking about it and see where we go. And I'm sure sometimes we'll hit a home run and other times we won't. Oh, on the topic of coffee. So obviously the podcast is available on Apple Podcasts for now, right? So
soon to be Spotify, hopefully.
That's where you'll look for it short term through, I guess, the end of this year. And in the show notes, there is a link for it's buy me a coffee thing, where if you find any entertainment in this, even if it's 10, 15 minutes, and you want to donate a couple bucks, that's how you can do it, right?
Or go to our website and buy a t-shirt.
Or go to Exclusive Minds and buy a shirt. That's as good as a donation for us. So yeah, I don't think there's any expectations that we're looking for that, and we have no advertisers, and it'll be pretty much freeform, no subscriptions. I
Yeah.
hate subscriptions.
Subscriptions
So
are
even
bullshit.
if we overnight became super successful, I still wouldn't do a freaking subscription model. It just drives me nuts.
Yeah, I
hate that.
mean,
that's a whole nother topic,
for
right?
businesses that makes sense, but for this, it's not the move.
No. So I think we'll just kind of keep winging it and see where it goes.
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. We really, like I said in the beginning, I know it's so cliche to say, but we really enjoy doing this, and it's something that we want to bring bring people on, pick their brains about it, and talk to local businesses or whatever. I mean, it's just something that we're both passionate about, and if you have any suggestions, be sure to email us. I think the website or the emails, and like if you scroll down on the podcast thing, you could see
it's
the
in
website
there.
right
So
away.
I mean the landing page, I guess, for the podcast is off of the Exclusive Minds storefront. So it's still EXMNDS, and you'll see a tab for the podcast.
#ad. This was my favorite. I like this. This was good. I like the energy that we had. This was really good. I mean, this was my favorite besides the first one.
There's a stretch. Thanks. So I don't know what anything. I'm trying to think of any other housekeeping notes. We're going to try and do this weekly, and the intention is to launch the episodes on Sunday.
Yeah, we're going to shoot for Sunday just to kind of have it in the beginning of the week. If you're going on your drive to work on Monday morning or school, whatever you guys have going on.
Yep. And we'll continue to give you kind of the behind the scenes. Because again, the interesting thing for me is also just kind of learning about podcasting and marketing and just actually doing it and hosting it and what's behind the scenes going on, because I don't think anybody gets any exposure to that. It's fairly easy. It's fairly easy to do a podcast. It's not so much
to maintain it.
Easy to maintain it, and I think to get an audience, obviously. But yeah, for us, I mean, we pretty much won the first episode, and this one again, I think we're going to put up unedited, so you will get it raw for whatever the 50 minutes. There's no editing, and part of that's because neither one of us really are audio engineers, and we're still trying to figure out GarageBand or Logic, and at some point, I'm sure we'll probably start to edit it.
When we get the video, we're going to probably have to do some editing.
Well, I mean, yeah, clearly for that. So for now, it'll be kind of raw and unedited, and we'll see where we go, and we'll start to dial it in. But we'll let you know. I mean, if we edit the podcast, we'll let you know what was edited and try and just kind of give you some exposure to it. But right now, we're pretty much running on a Zoom podcaster. If you want to go online and look at that, and it's working fairly well for kind of a small thing. We're getting a third microphone, so the intention is to bring on some guest folks. I think we'll try and bring my son on to have him give his exposure and kind of generational differences, and maybe we'll find out what the hell he did with that Bitcoin.
I mean, yeah, man, it's awesome. I mean, and we also have a little surprise coming up within the next couple weeks with the, you know what I mean?
So we got a new clothing drop coming. So we just did our breast cancer awareness hoodies that we do once a year. So we're coming off of that, and I think are we doing t-shirts and hoodies or both, or what
yeah, so it's gonna be one t-shirt and one hoodie. Now there's gonna be different color combinations and everything like that. Like, I don't want to give away too much, but it's gonna be, I think, 4 colors for the hoodies or 3 colors or something like that. I don't know. And then for the t-shirts, probably the same.
So that'll be coming in the next couple of weeks. I think we've got some prints going now to do some photos.
They look sick, by the way.
Get up. Maybe what we'll do is we can actually use the graphic as the artwork for this podcast, so people can kind of get a hint of what's coming. I mean,
we just got to make sure it's 3,000 by 3,000.
Yeah, well, So I mean, it's interesting. Apple has this guideline that the artwork for podcast has to be 3,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels, and it has to be exactly 3,000.
And I was sending Joe images that were
so annoying. I don't, because oh god, so. It's amazing how annoying something simple could be.
Yeah.
We fixed that problem, and I have a mechanism now to get it dialed in.
One of the growing pains.
Man, it was just a pain in the ass.
Just one of the growing pains. But you guys been listening to like the Exclusive Minds podcast. My name is David.
And Joe, thanks again. This is episode number 2. We'll catch you next week for episode 3. And again, put a review up, give us 5 stars. It helps us somehow. We're not at that point where we need to know, but yeah, just listen and pass it along. And that would be wonderful. The more we can get, the merrier.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Take care.